Some interesting news came out today about the PlayStation 4 and Sony as a company, really. And what came out kind of surprised me a little bit because what's happening right now is Sony is adding support for PlayStation 4 games to their online streaming service, PlayStation Now. And if you've never used PlayStation Now before, it's actually an okay service. I was a little surprised because I hadn't tried it. And when I saw that PS4 games were going to it, I thought it might be about time I at least tried the service just so I can give you guys an idea of what it is. Anyway, I signed up for the 7-day trial. If you go on Sony Store right now, you can actually sign up for a trial. It's 7 days and it's just free. You have to cancel it beforehand, so make sure you do cancel it. It's very easy to cancel. They even give you instructions on how to do so right when you're signing up. So I went ahead and tried the 7-day trial. I played around with it today, and it's interesting because it's not as bad as I remember streaming games to be. So if you guys remember, there was a service called OnLive. This was quite a while ago, years ago actually, and they would try to do what Sony is doing with PlayStation Now right now, and what I assume Microsoft's going to do with Game Pass later on, and that is you actually stream your service. So you stream your game from a computer, or in this case, possibly a PlayStation that they have set up on the other end. It plays it. Your computer doesn't actually render any of the graphics. All it does is decode information back and forth that is the stream that you're playing. And back then there was a lot of issues with it, mostly the input lag. And back then it wasn't very good at all. You would kind of be playing and you would know pretty quickly that whatever you're doing is behind, usually at least up to like a full second sometimes. That's tough when you're actually like inputting the commands and your character is going in one direction well after you've already pressed it. It's very jarring almost when you're playing. It's very hard to keep up with sometimes, or you'll just get ahead and then it'll fall behind you. And that's if you had a good connection back then. Well, I think they've spent some time to fine-tune it, and like I said, I was really not interested in PlayStation Now because from what I could tell, it was all older games. Well, now it's going to be PS4 games, and PlayStation Now is an app that you can download also for your computer. So this is where things get kind of interesting, because if PlayStation 4 games start showing up on PlayStation Now, that could have an interesting effect on Sony's their mindset for games, because keep in mind, it's very expensive to build a console, to market a console, to spend all the research and development for that console. And if you can have people's PCs play them off of whatever you have set up on the other end, whether it's servers of some kind that do all the processing power, and because a lot of times what they do is there are queues that you have to get into. Like when I started a game, one game took 2 minutes to load, the other one took like 20 seconds to launch, and what I assume that is they're waiting for a computer or, again, a PlayStation on the other side to get freed up to then let me use that to play the game. And of course, servers are not cheap. Whatever they're running on the other side is not cheap, but I have to imagine running a server farm like that is definitely cheaper overall than researching, developing a full system. Because remember, you're having people pay monthly. In this case, PlayStation Now is $20 a month. It's $19.99. And it's not bad for what they give you in terms of games. And you'll see here, what I did was I went on there, I kind of scrolled around, and there were some good games on there. Keep in mind, they were all like PS3 or before, so they weren't like new games. Like, you're not going to get Horizon Zero Dawn on here probably for years, but there was a few. Like, they had God of War 3, which is pretty cool. It's very interesting. It's a weird feeling to be playing God of War on a computer, or especially God of War 3. But what you do is you actually plug in a DualShock 4 controller, and the app actually downloads the driver along with Windows, gets that all sorted out right away. So you're playing the DualShock 4 right away with it, and they remap the buttons so that start is like the right side of the touchpad, select is the left side, and you're off and running at that point with your DualShock 4 and a PlayStation 3 game. So when I was playing God of War 3, it didn't feel bad, it didn't feel great, but it wasn't bad. Like, I was actually playing, I was like, okay, this is okay. It's not as jarring as it was back in the day when I was playing OnLive. Now, of course, Sony bought Gaikai, and I heard people keep talking about how they bought OnLive. I wasn't 100% sure on that, but I know they bought Gaikai with this streaming future in mind. So Sony's been thinking about streaming games for a long time. I mean, this, in their eyes, must be a great way to save money on the research and development of, say, a system, but I don't think systems are going anywhere anytime soon, guys. This is more for mainstream people who don't want to buy a system to play one game. If they can wait a little while, and on Sony's end, they benefit because they'll get stuff out of their old games that they wouldn't be selling anymore. They get discontinued, used games get sold, none of that money goes to the developers, it goes to that store. But if Sony can recycle some of these older games to people who don't have PlayStations, one, they might then get value out of a game that has no more value, and two, they might draw these consumers in. So maybe you liked God of War 3, and then you want to play the next God of War that's coming up, but you need to get a PlayStation for it, so then you go out and buy a PlayStation. So there are some good pros for Sony there. So to get back on track with the story, I do play God of War 3. It wasn't bad. I then decide, you know what would be interesting? Let's try a fighting game. So I switch over to Street Fighter 4 Ultra, or whichever one it is now that Capcom has out, because they have so many of those old Street Fighter 4 games. Anyway, I load that up. I go to training, and I can tell right away if I hit like the low punch, it takes a couple seconds, or like not a couple, like half a second to then respond. So playing a fighting game would not be super easy. You can definitely get ahead of yourself with that. But overall, it was a clean service. The service worked well. It was right on my computer too. I did test it on one that didn't have a video card, and it worked perfectly fine on there too, which tells me that you could get laptops that aren't set up at all for gaming and then play these games over that service. And all you're doing is you're paying $20 a month, but it's like a full range of games that you could play from Sony's library. And then they also had like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and then some other games on there as well. So they had a decent enough library for $20 a month that I think you can get value out of it. They also mentioned that cloud saves is a thing with that. So you can actually play a game on there and then save and then go to your PS3 and play it right from there as well, or your PS4 from PlayStation Now, so it does travel. That's actually really cool too, that these cloud saves stick around. Now, of course, because it's a streaming service, I think this means that they can take games away as well as give you games, so the library, I assume, will be changing, much like how the Sega Channel did way back in the day, where I would get games. So I had the Sega Channel way back when, and I would get games, but then games would disappear. I would get games and they'd disappear. So it's hard to say if these games stick around for months, or maybe they have 1 month exclusive or something. But overall, I think this is an interesting idea for Sony, and it's not going to affect their exclusives, guys. Don't get me wrong here, because I can tell you now 100% they are not going to take a game that's coming out, especially from a third party, and put it on this streaming service, because it makes no financial sense for them to do that. They're going to sell 1 million, 2 million, 3 million copies of big blockbuster games, and if they put it on the streaming service, they're basically giving it away instead of making all that money. So no, Horizon Zero Dawn probably would be a game that would show up on the PlayStation Now service 2-3 years from now. That's how far down the line. I think the PS4 games that are announced to be coming to this that can be played on the PC would be games from like its first year. I'm thinking like Killzone would be on there, for example, like the launch one, maybe Knack. Maybe probably some old basketball games or something like that. It definitely is not going to be anything major. You're not going to see, like I said, Horizon Zero Dawn won't show up there. Definitely not. Neo won't show up there. It's going to be older games. However, there could be, maybe they do put one big game on there to get it kicked off. So maybe like Neo wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe they take that down the road and put it on there sooner just to get people kicked off, because I think they want the streaming service to do well. But it's going to be interesting to see, because now PlayStation games are playable on the PC. Now, do people then wait and not buy a PlayStation? Or do they just want that really good 100% no lag experience and they go out and buy a $300, $250, $400 PS4 Pro? It's hard to say, but it's very interesting. I did not expect this to happen. I thought PS4 games would not show up on PS Now until the PlayStation 5 was out, and they would always be a generation behind, because it makes sense. But it's interesting to see that Sony wants to get the streaming service going faster. Again, it makes more sense money-wise, because then you can get your old libraries to be new again almost. But this was just a topic I was kind of interested in, guys. The PlayStation Now experience overall is not bad. $20 a month is really up to you depending on the games that are there. Again, if there's like a 7-day free trial, you can just try it out and see if you like it. You don't even need a PlayStation to try it. You just go on the PlayStation Store, sign up for the 7-day trial, and then you're off. You can just try it. Now, you do need to get a DualShock 4, because that's the only option they really gave me. I have a DualShock 4, obviously, because I have a PlayStation 4, but if you don't have a PS4, that might be a little tough. I will say that. You can't use a keyboard from what I can tell, so you would need to get a DualShock 4. But if you have a DualShock 4, you want to check out their streaming service, see how the input lag is. It's free. You might as well just try it out and see what it is. I think the download was like 80 megabytes or something like that, and then you're off. So it's not bad. It can be played on any computer. You can play it on a junky laptop if you want, or your really nice gaming rig, but it might be worth a shot. I'm really interested to see where this goes. It's going to come down to which games they announce, because if it's a good PS4 game that they announce and then some junky ones, that could be interesting. If it's a bunch of junky ones, it's not going to be interesting. So they would have to put something out. Infamous would work really well, I think, as a selling point for it, because that's a great game that a lot of people probably didn't play if you didn't have a PlayStation 4. So we'll keep an eye on it. It was very interesting to me, this whole streaming thing, because now we have Xbox with their Game Pass. Now we have Sony putting out PS4 games for their PlayStation Now. This is why competition is good, guys. This is why you want all three companies to be in contention, because stuff like this will happen where you can get good value for your money. $20 a month for, say, 30, 40 games on PlayStation Now is not a bad deal. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. I'm very curious what you think about this whole streaming service with Sony and PS4 games, PS3 games. Maybe they add PS1 and PS2 games. They could do a lot here, but it's really up to Sony. So let me know what you guys think down below. I'm very curious. I will see you next time.